I think at this stage of a business, um, you really do have to make sure that you're doing a bit of everything. I don't think you're ever in a situation where you are going to just be doing one thing. We are so tuned into the fact that everything we are doing is measured in hard ROI. This is not a I like the blue button over the green button sell. This is
Yeah.
not a, hey, I really like you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think relationships are very important in sales, but this is about credibility and proof.
All right, and welcome everyone back to the New Well podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Miles, and I'm excited for the conversation today. We are here with Adam Kay from GoodFit.io, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what he's currently working on and doing, the trends that he's seeing over at GoodFit, which is a AI-driven platform for B2B companies primarily. I'd love to learn more about what you guys are doing, Adam, trends that you're seeing, maybe what you're focused on kind of going into 2026 based on a lot of the data that you kind of, you deal with. I'm sure you see a lot of, things and you have the different insights, things that, the average civilian maybe doesn't have. So I'd like to get into that, and but I'll let you maybe introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your background, and we'll kind of go from there.
Great to meet you, and thank you for having me on here. And Happy New Year, of course. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess by way of background, I've been at GoodFit for all of a lofty 3 months so far, so still very much a newbie. But I actually go back
Okay.
with the guys quite a long way. I was part of a team with Harrison, who's our CEO here at GoodFit, Alex, who's our founder here at GoodFit. Alex was my head of revenue operations, and Harrison was my founder at a company called Paddle. Who
Yeah.
amongst us, we scaled from 0 to 100 in about 4 years between 2018 and 2022. So that was a really exciting ride. But that was probably kind of the third step in my journey of being a sales leader, and have got onto a couple of other opportunities since then. But the chance to reunite with the team, to go through that journey together, and really with GoodFit specifically to focus on bringing to market a solution to a problem that we lived and breathed at Paddle. In fact, the idea of GoodFit came from this issue that we had at Paddle, which was, how do I identify the best accounts? How do I make sure my team are only focusing on qualified accounts? How am I able to really plan a go-to-market motion with absolute clarity and certainty on the size of my market? And from there, GoodFit was born. I've joined the ride 3 years later off the back of a Series A funding halfway through last year. And now it's go time.
Wow, that's exciting, man.
Always
Well, yeah,
exciting.
that's exciting times. That's great. So this is your kind of your new project going into the new year. Sounds like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty new. Always in startup life, I always say it's like dog years. You multiply it by seven, and that's how long you really feel like you've been there. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, 3 months isn't enough. And any other job that I've done, and I've always been very deliberate about never working in the same industry twice. I feel just from a learning and growth opportunity, kind of going into something you're unfamiliar with, be that payments, be that workforce management, etc. It's always so new and exciting to learn, and it takes me a good at least 3 months to even understand the language people are talking. Whereas
Yeah.
again, here at GoodFit, because I've lived the problem, because we're selling to revenue leaders as our target persona, and actually in two of the three places I've worked since Paddle, I've actually purchased GoodFit as a customer. So I've seen it from the other side
Wow.
of the table as well. It's really helped me ramp and speed up sort of my familiarity with the guys' kind of ways of working. So yeah, I feel like it's not so new, despite it only being 3 months.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. So the ICP like demographically, psychographically, since that was kind of you, you know. So I would say that's great. Like
Yeah, yeah,
that's what you're that's the best position to be in. If you can go into when you're doing what you're doing, when you understand uh, the customer, firsthand from having been the customer. Like they say, conviction, certainty, sells. Which if
totally.
you, that's like I forget what book it's from, but they talk about the levels of certainty when it comes to sales and communication, and like the highest form is considered resolve, where it's like there's no doubt at all. It's like total and utter resolve. And so I would say
Totally.
you've had that. You
Yeah,
have that. So
100%. I mean, I've
yeah.
left sales roles before. certainly earlier in my career, where I've asked myself the honest question of if I were the buyer on the other end of this call, would I be buying this solution?
Hmm.
And it's hard to power through when the answer is no.
Yeah.
It's hard to fake it, and it's hard to stay motivated when you really feel that, hey, I'm selling something that I wouldn't buy myself. Um, that's a tough gig to run. But you're right.
Yeah.
I think also in terms of kind of wellness, in terms of health, in terms of motivation, being working and selling and bringing to market a product that you are truly and authentically interested in the subject matter. Um, it really does help. Yes, I do
Mhm.
have a life outside of work and outside of go to market, but yeah, I'm a go to market geek. I enjoy learning about it. I enjoy reading about it. I enjoy geeking out on it with friends of mine in the industry. So talking about things at work that I would genuinely talk about outside of work in my free time,
Mhm.
I think it really helps with the kind of the challenge which every startup or ambitious business has because you are naturally and authentically motivated and interested in the product.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And so, what exactly, what exactly was your role at Paddle? Which I'm sure it was, startup life. You have a lot, probably different hats, many different roles. It kind of depended on the day. But and then I'm curious what exactly you're doing now at GoodFit.
Yeah, so I joined Paddle in 2018, similar stage and size to where GoodFit um, were when I joined them a few months back. Just raised a Series A, had been growing exceptionally fast for 4 or 5 years, um, and actually I joined at the tail end of a aggressive hiring spree. I think I was employee number 120. I joined as VP sales, so I walked into a sales team that also was responsible for the BDR team and sales operations. There was about 30, 35 people in that team at the time. Um, and ultimately my job was to scale the organization, to scale the new business side of the organization. That meant getting a team that was productive, hitting targets, developing our go-to-market strategy. I was part of the executive team as well, so growing the organization through the subsequent round of fundings that we achieved, and launching into new markets, be that the US, be that China, be that our enterprise market. So really anything new business I was responsible for. At Paddle. And like I said, it was a really successful ride, albeit an exceptionally stressful one, an exceptionally difficult one. It was through pandemics. Um, and I've come into GoodFit in a similar vein. I'm responsible for the revenue organization, for scaling the revenue organization. I report into Harrison, our CEO, and have come in at an early stage to really help us grow into a well-oiled machine.
Hmm. And is that primarily, because obviously I do talk to a lot of different go-to-market leaders, revenue leaders, VP, of sales or revenue, and insert said sales and type of leadership role, whatever that is at different capacities. But and I'm curious what that looks like for you. Like I would say sometimes I talk to individuals and they're primarily focused on like recruiting A player talent, ramping A player talent. Maybe that sometimes it's more focused on like different advertising angles and efforts. Maybe it's writing copy, or maybe it's coming up with different creative variations, maybe all of the above. But yeah, walk me through more specifically what that looks like for you.
I think at this stage of a business, um, you really do have to make sure that you're doing a bit of everything. I don't think you're ever in a situation where you are going to just be doing one thing.
Hmm.
And I wish I could say that it was, advanced wisdom that I had and clear strategy that I had to figure out this is the scale and stage of an organization that I like. But I think at any early stage business, whatever your role is, be that leadership, be that IC, whatever it might be, you've got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and forget what your job title says. That's the most important part. So yeah, there are parts of the job that I prefer over others, and yeah, things like hiring A players is kind of the key ingredient to any scaling organization. But I'm also running deals. I'm getting on the phone in cold calling sessions with our team and getting involved there partly because hey, I want to know every single part of particularly the revenue side of the business, but every part of the business. I want to lead from the front and show that I can do it as well, and don't just kind of sit in my ivory tower, kind of giving orders. And I want to develop this sense of team, that we're all in it together, and that titles do not matter, hierarchy does not matter. We all have a responsibility for growing this machine.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it, man. Love it. That's great. And so what's been, obviously I know it's like a new role, but I would say either what's currently or what do you foresee kind of being the number one maybe challenge that you're going to be facing?
Just one. Yeah. I think we can talk all day about hiring and
Yeah.
developing A-class talent. I think it's something that is, and it's so non-exclusive to GoodFit. I think it's probably the same challenge that every ambitious, exciting organization has. I think perhaps and it's certainly valid. That is one of our biggest challenges, which is identifying, attracting, retaining, and developing A-class talent. It is the key ingredient to our scale. I've come from a background, my first taste of sales was for a great organization that only promoted internally. They didn't hire managers. Everyone started at the bottom rung there and worked their way up. And I love that. I feel that that's, for me, something that I'm very keen to build out where I can. Naturally, I'm not always going to be able to, fill roles where there's internal people up for promotion, but I'll always bias towards that. But I think actually probably our bigger challenge is actually the industry we're in. So we sell account and contact level data to B2B SaaS organizations, helping them map their market and optimize for funnel performance there. The challenge we have really is the data market, in the loosest definition of the word, is very saturated. Like many people, I get many emails a day and cold calls from people promising me data that's going to fill my top of funnel or improve my win rates or increase my ACV or make my team more productive or whatever it might be. And our big challenge is how are we different? Why are we different? How do we own a piece of this market? And what are we really trying to do to the market? Are we segment creation? Are we segment iteration? Are we coming up as the next best thing in terms of direct competitors? So I think really positioning our value proposition, really being able to articulate that at an increasing scale and across the team so that people understand exactly who we are, why we're different and why we fit into the market. That's going to be one of our biggest challenges and objectives for the year ahead.
Yeah, and if you had to say what that is, what would you say right now?
As in why we're different?
Yeah. What would you say at the moment is like your USP?
Yeah, I think our USP is the extent and configurability of our data to our prospects. I think there are many legacy providers out there who you buy a license to access a huge amount of data, and then you're kind of given, hey, we'll see you in 12 months for renewal, and let's see if you can find some value out of this. I also think that a lot of data providers today are selling the same thing. You get your very basic firmographic data, your geography, your industry, your size, maybe a few other things, but how helpful is that? Really understanding what is my TAM, what is my SAM, what's my SOM and ICP, so that I can make sure that I'm planning my go-to-market accurately and making sure my team are really going after the right accounts. And I'm sure we'll come on to this later. The other challenge associated with it is the vast development within the sales and MarTech go-to-market tooling ecosystem. There are so many tools out there. I saw a mind-blowing stat of just kind of how many solutions there are today for sales and marketing leaders versus 6 or 7 years ago. And it's mind-blowing. And that's cool and that's exciting. But I also think revenue leaders like myself have gone through that kind of curve of, hey, let's try everything. I actually still do, but I was very aggressive about keeping open a 30-minute a week demo slot for anyone wanting to pitch any sales or marketing technology to me, because I just wanted to see what was out there, what could help my team, etc. I've now got to a point where I'm struggling to tell the difference between all of them. I don't know how they'll all work together. They seem like a lot of bets and gambles rather than something I'm confident I need. And so actually there's the other challenge, which is really getting buy-in to people to say, this is not just one of those application layer wrappers that could be cool or exciting, actually has intrinsic value within it as well.
Yeah. No, I agreed 100%, man. And I would say, like, The reason I asked, I'm like, what is your USP is really for the listeners. So like, if there's listeners that are looking for data, I was curious, if you could,
Yeah.
tell them why. Um, but I would say too, like, I think one of the things that you said earlier at the beginning of the call was really valuable because you talked about how you actually gave like your why at the beginning. When you were shopping and you said you ended up buying GoodFit, you were a customer of GoodFit 3 times over, and it was particularly for the teams that are, it's like what are our most valuable accounts, and making sure that we're directing our attention toward those things and things like that. So like I would say the more that you can focus on the why, that is what's key. Because if I look, for example, like in this whole B2B tech IT consulting space, SaaS, whatever, what have you, almost all the websites, if you ever just go poke around, they're all the same, and if you're familiar with the whole idea of like the what, the what, the how, and then versus the why, it's like they all say the what and the how, but they never really talk about the why. And I would say the marketing message and the sales message should be the why first. It's like, well, why did we start this company, and like why this is important to you, and so on and so forth. And like the more that you can focus on that, the more because I actually think it's kind of like it's classic. It's like I would say marketing sales 101. But what Steve Jobs said about marketing, still to me is like masterful. It's like so simple but so profound, and it's easily forgotten. When he said marketing more than anything is about values, like what does someone value?
Yeah.
But when people craft a marketing message or they're training their sales team, they focus too much. I think they over-index on product knowledge, understanding the product and the features and all that stuff, as opposed to what is our as opposed to the ICP, right? The client, the customer is all that really matters, and understanding
100%.
why this is important to them. Um,
100%. I
yeah,
think that's spot on. And I think particularly in this industry, when you're selling to revenue leaders, and we are a subscription business, renewal is more important to us than acquisition.
yeah,
Um, we are so tuned into the fact that everything we are doing is measured in hard ROI. This is not a I like the blue button over the green button sell. This
yeah,
is not a, hey, I really like you. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do think relationships are very important in sales, but this is about credibility and proof. And again, back to the why I joined GoodFit, it's a solution that the ROI is so demonstrable that we can really talk about the impact we have made and measured that. And I know every salesperson has to do an ROI case these days, and to get CFO sign off, you've got to put your business case together, and everyone's promising 25x uplift or whatever it might be. And again, CFOs are no longer believing these business cases, right? Because they're like, yeah, I've been promised a 25x uplift by every single salesperson selling me everything I've bought over the last 10 years.
yeah,
The beauty of GoodFit is that actually we're able to superimpose retrospectively what your performance would have been with us had you have used our accounts that we selected and prioritized versus your last 12 months go to market. And 12 months in the future, we're able to look back and say, when they're choosing to renew or not, what's been the impact of GoodFit here? Have we actually optimized our go-to-market? Have we actually created more pipeline, increased our ACV, improved our win rate, whatever the kind of the key objective that it would be important to solve there?
yeah,
So I think that's really, really important. I think the other part, again, tied in with some of the trends in the world is I think people are finding it refreshing to go back to basics, to go back to the fundamentals and the foundations of go-to-market, because I think we've kind of lost sight a little bit with all the new products and technologies and advancements that there are in the world around what the foundations of a strong go-to-market is. And the first step in any go-to-market motion is how many accounts are there in the world that I can sell to? And how do I define those accounts? And what makes one account better than another account? And how do I start getting information? Like, this is really just foundational stuff that it's been a bit terrifying for me speaking to revenue leaders who are not doing this, who are still spraying on praying or empowering their SDR team to select which accounts they would like to work in that respect, which I know has benefits around learning and growth, etc. But really building a repeatable and scalable engine requires definition, requires measurement, requires planning. And without that, I don't know how people can accurately responsibly go to market with their goals in mind.
yeah. Agreed, dude. Agreed. I just wrote a newsletter on what not to do in 2026, and the whole thing was focused on doing less, like less is more. So I love that you said like get back to basics. Like if you could just do one, one or focus on one strategy, right? It's like one channel, one medium, one message, right? One sales process, one pitch, one ICP. Like just focus on just one. You could do it masterfully, as opposed
Yeah,
to all that, everything. So I love that you're saying that. I think
yeah.
I think
I
more
mean, just
people
let me
need to hear
clarify
that.
though, if that's all right, Mitchell, because I think, yeah, look, I have no issue with complexity, but it's about foundations. And look, we see this in our direct market, but if you're going to build a complex, advanced, exciting house, you need strong foundations to support it. You need really solid and probably not so exciting and complex foundations to support it.
Hmm.
We look at our competitive landscape today and people using AI this to help infer which accounts and signals and outreach strategies, and it's cool and exciting. The reality is if your foundations are not correct, if you don't have the right accounts for you to be kind of generating signals and intent data and personalization of messaging, you're going to be limited. You're really, no matter
Hmm.
how good that message or how good that signal is, if your foundations are not solid, then really you're still shooting in the dark. And I take the same approach to building a go-to-market machine as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. So, what other trends are you seeing right now that you feel like it's worth mentioning?
So we've spoken a little bit about going back to foundations. I think we're seeing from a technology perspective, the AI evolution or revolution, however you want to define it, it's fascinating. You can't help but be super excited and interested and terrified all at the same time. Am I
Yeah.
going to have a job in 5 years' time? I don't know. I've stopped trying to kind of lose sleep over that, and what happens will happen because I'm not really in control of that outcome. But I think we are seeing the maturity of the AI world, and I think that's manifesting itself in certain ways. So, for example, we're seeing more and more frameworks, more and more regulation around organizations' use of AI. We're seeing it more and more when we go to sell our solution, kind of the infosec hurdles we have to jump through to make sure that we are compliant and able to service the customer according to their rules. And so I think people have really put in a bunch of playbooks around how they will use AI in their organization, what is allowed and what isn't allowed. Um, and we're seeing this reflected in some of the kind of big mega tech cap organizations that we see in terms of how they use AI. They're no longer thinking about open ecosystems and being able to kind of share information with third parties. Everything's becoming increasingly closed down within their ecosystem as well, which I think will create some challenges around the proliferation and utility of AI for organizations as well. Um, I also think that, again, we're seeing, I mean, it's not a new trend, but it's a continuation of an old trend, which is just buyer sophistication. Buyers are increasingly more educated, are increasingly more tuned on and switched on to what they want. And so, selling to a customer or a prospect by way of educating them on what they need, it's becoming more and more challenging. And so, again, I think this really shifts the emphasis from a sales perspective about methodologies and how we sell and how we go to market and how we're adding value. Because, again, historically, my first sales job was selling an online media monitoring solution, which was pretty similar to Google Alerts, if I'm being honest.
Hmm.
And so, in fact, it was one of the first SaaS organizations in the UK. A lot of my job was to explain what SaaS was and why we don't need to take up any server space in your basement, like every other software solution you've bought in the past. Um, this is very, very different. I think, a lot of the people we speak to, maybe not the first time we speak to them, but certainly the second time in the process we speak to them, they've done a hell of a lot of research on us, on our competition. There's a lot of information out there. And so we've got to be a lot more savvy to the fact that our buyers are educated. Um, they may not be well educated, i.e., they may have picked up information that's out of date or fed from a competitor that undermines and is inaccurate. But I think it changes the relationship of the buyer and the seller. And I think that for me is a really important lesson. And I'm not quite sure what that means in terms of how that evolves our go to market. If I'm being honest, we're still kind of thinking through that. But I think it comes back to the one key thing, which is authenticity. right? You can't pull the wool over people's eyes anymore. You've got to be willing to walk away from a deal when it's not right, when it's not right for you and it's not right for the buyer. These are fundamentals we've learned in SaaS many, many years ago, that selling a bad deal is a bad thing, and churn is worse than, it's much worse than acquiring a new customer. But I think, we've also got to kind of take a step back and say, hey, I'm talking to someone who's got the world of information at their fingertips, right? It's very, very easy for them to get informed. And what that means in terms of my relationship with them has got to be a lot more authentic, has got to be a lot more vulnerable, has got to be a lot more partner driven, rather than me trying to educate the buyer and hoping they understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Um, I think that is everybody's challenge. Again, I get to have a lot of these conversations, and I think the buyers being as educated as they are, as product aware as they are, as feature aware as they are, it's made it a challenge. But I do think that for the people who know how to handle it, it's actually going to be kind of to their benefit, the competitive advantage.
I agree.
Yeah, and I do, from a sales perspective, I do think that trying to automate sales using AI, which I think inevitably will happen, I do think that's going to get a lot messier than anything. Because I think because of the fact that people are as educated as they are, I think that they're going to want to talk to a human.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. Maybe. I'm not sure I agree. I think we're probably at the point, and I'm certainly at this point, I get plenty of emails a day offering services, from recruitment to pipeline generation to whatever it might be. I'm no longer impressed by those emails that say, hey, Adam, I hear you're hiring 3 sales reps and have just raised your Series A. And, that's not personalization. That's clearly AI driven, that's taken a few data points from a very generic data set and built personalization out of it, right? I don't believe that's a human emailing me. Hey, even if it is, I don't actually believe it. But I do think when I buy software, and I do buy software, the more information I can self-serve, and maybe this is just my own bias, but the more information I can get myself in my own time through a channel that I want to receive it, in a format that I want to receive it, the better decision I'm going to make.
Yeah.
So yeah, salespeople are certainly helpful, especially when I have questions or I want to ask about use cases and I want to have that point of accountability. But I do believe I can now do 80 to 90% of the research myself in terms of how this solution will work for me and whether it fills my needs without actually interacting with people. And the onus is on the software organizations to be able to make that information available in an easily digestible way. So I'm not sure what the future of sales looks like for salespeople. Again, like I said, I've stopped thinking about it, just because it could go either way. It could go, AI takes over and we're all out of a job, or it could be, hey, it really will heighten the importance of human relationships, because people will want that over a lot of the automation and AI that there is out there today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, who knows? But I do think that human beings are going to be put on like more so like behind a paywall. That's almost like you'll have to pay a premium to actually like have a customer service rep that's a human as opposed to an AI. Things like that. It's going to be I think it'll end up kind of becoming this like premium service in a way. So, but we'll see. I have no idea. So we'll see how things progress. Maybe the AI does it a lot better and people
That's
would
right.
prefer.
That's right.
But
That's assuming global warming doesn't get us first, right?
yeah, right. So that's great, man. That's great. And so earlier you said you could spend all day talking about recruiting. So I'd like to dive a little bit more into that. Like what are you seeing in terms of trends as well, experiencing things like that?
Yeah. So obviously the market goes in cycles. I think we've come out of a cycle probably about 6 months ago where it was an employer's market, where you could really, after the VC crash in 2022, I guess 2021, 2022, lots of layoffs. It was quite easy to hire great talent. I think the market has gone full circle again, and great talent is hard to hire. I think as well, because a lot of companies are now thinking about efficiency, where perhaps due to AI or just kind of unit economics, people have no longer got these big inflated sales teams. There's a lot of people out of work who are looking. So despite people being out of work, it is still an employee's market in my mind. I know with every candidate that I'm employing at the moment, the best ones have got 3 or 4 other job offers at the moment. But I think the hardest part has always been for me, which is sourcing. Salespeople are generally quite good at selling themselves. If not, they're in big trouble, because if they can't sell themselves, then good
Yeah.
luck with another. But you know, you're trying to create a great experience for the candidates. Yet at the same time, you're trying to assess whether this candidate is the right fit for you and whether you're the right fit for the candidate. And especially when you do a lot of that remotely, that's really hard to do in what, 4, 5 hours of interactions. Getting a real feel of whether someone's good or not. And everyone's LinkedIn talks about how they were in the President's Club and hit all of their quotas over the last 6 years and whatnot. And so really identifying a star talent and sourcing that in the first place is the hardest part. Actually, once you've done that, getting people through a well-oiled process, getting people excited about the opportunity, finding the right people, I think that's a lot more straightforward. But I think sourcing is always going to be the hardest part there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think, again, this is where it comes back down to authentic relationships. Yeah, I'm thankfully able to leverage relationships on the past, the reputation I've built about the types of teams that I've built, and find the right people. And hey, the teams that I built aren't for everyone. I know that. I know that, there are some people who would not enjoy working in an environment, be that early stage VC backed, working in a team run by Adam Kay. That's fine. It's not for everyone. And actually, I find my job when I'm interviewing is to make that really clear to people. The worst thing, as I say to candidates, is that we, missell the dream to each other. People come on board, realize 3 months later this is not what they expected, and we've all had stories of this, right? Some of us have even been victims of it, and end up leaving very soon after. That doesn't suit me, the employer. That doesn't suit you, the employee. So why do that to each other? Let's just be really candid and open. And kind of that's my management style as well, which is very candid and open and vulnerable, even if it's not necessarily what the company wants me to say, because, hey, we're losing a great candidate. Well, I'd rather lose that candidate in the hiring process than have them come on board and then leave 3 to 6 months later.
Yeah. Agreed. And so, how are you getting around the sourcing issue? Like, what are you doing to source?
Yeah, so I think network has always been my strongest battle card in that respect. Be that my own personal network or other kind of networks, professional networks that I'm part of, word of mouth, etc. I have a very, very good. She's not officially a talent acquisition manager, but she's wearing that hat at the moment. And we spend a lot of time together, really thinking about what are the traits we're looking for, what are the skills we're looking for, that have made us that give us confidence that somebody's going to be successful in this role. And it's been really interesting for me as I've gone through my career that often the best salespeople I've worked with have not come from a pure sales background. They've come from different background. I mean, I didn't come from a sales background. I was a corporate lawyer when I started, and I pivoted into sales. I've had some of the best people I've worked with didn't go to college, didn't get a degree, didn't come from sales, have come from other industries. And so actually really being very, very sharp on the traits and criteria rather than the experiences, and how do we test for those traits and criteria in an aligned recruitment process has been one of the biggest kind of objectives for me coming into this role, is to define that very, very clearly. And then to continuously review, iterate, and improve that process, because it isn't static. It does change. You do learn things, especially if you've only been at a company a month or two, in terms of what is specifically unique about what makes someone great in this company. So working very, very closely and making sure you're putting sufficient resource and time into that. This is not her responsibility. This is my responsibility. Hiring is what's going to make me successful or not. I can build a great sales process. I can build wonderful scripts and templates and coaching playbooks. If I've got the wrong people on board, then again, we're not back to that fundamentals piece. We're not going to get very far. So again, a lot of this is about my mindset, which is making sure that I ring fence time for this. This is not just something that I do 5 minutes at the end of the day and respond to my messages about candidates. I'm dedicating a lot of time to this day in, day out, to make sure that we find and continue to fine tune that engine to identify the right candidates there.
That's good. Yeah. And I would agree. Actually, it was some of my well, all of my best hires came from it was like a referral from someone I knew, you know, and so in order to scale that, lately I've been doing well the last couple of years. What's really worked is doing a bounty. So I'll either post or like send it to just a few people that I know and say, hey, I'm looking for this person, and like the reward is like 5, 10,000, whatever it may be, depending on the role, which it
Yeah,
usually ends up being significantly less than a recruiting fee, but
totally.
enough for they'll start to post and they'll send it to people, and then I just get plenty of applications. And but it's all about like sending it to the right people, because top talent knows top talent. Like the top
100%.
talent usually hangs out with high caliber people, and
Yes.
they kind of know what you're looking for. So as long as
Yes.
you're like, hey, I'm looking for this person, I thought of you, I really trust you, here's the traits I'm looking for. If they stay, if they stick after 60 days, I'm more than happy to send you, 5K or 10K or something.
Absolutely. That's a really
Yeah,
nice idea. I really
yeah,
like that. I,
yeah.
I think the other thing that to it is making sure that you're just not tied down into one strategy. So I wouldn't call it a mitigation strategy, but I have a plan B, which is we've untapped a source of hiring really high potential and really quality SDRs. We've really kind of nailed the traits and description of what we're looking for to help to identify these people, and we've proven, albeit with quite a short data set, correct. Um, One thing that I'm really trying to do now is what happens if I give these SDRs a bit more responsibility? What happens if I give them a couple of deals and handhold through those deals? Can I accelerate that progression timeline? I think most people go into an SDR role thinking 18 to 24 months, I'll be in this role and then I'll get into a closing role if I'm lucky. Why can't that be 3 to 6 months if they've got the right traits, if they've got the right ambition? And yeah, you've got to
Hmm.
think about a migration plan, how that works. It can't just be kind of switch the lights one day, switch on the next. But I'm also working with my more junior talents who I'm really, really impressed by, who are hungry, who are smart, who are educated, who have the right culture in terms of giving feedback, sharing feedback, wanting to improve processes, and saying, well, okay, they've never closed a deal before. Okay, they've not been classically trained in any kind of methodology, but that's my job. I can help with that. If I can actually avoid having to go through this rigmarole of sourcing and interviewing candidates, and I know I've got someone who is culturally aligned with success here, who has proven success in their current role, I want to see how far I can push them. Because I think that's what makes a great workplace environment is that, hey, one thing I can promise you if you come to work at GoodFit is you will always feel out of your depth. And so when I say this, that's not for everyone. Some people are terrified by that. But other people, and the right people for GoodFit, are the ones who are ambitious about growth and realize being out of your depth is where you learn and where you grow the most. And it's my job to make sure that you're not massively out of your depth, that you sink, but just a little bit out of your depth, so that you are
Hmm.
always got that room to grow and making sure that there is that facility to grow as well.
Yeah, agreed, 100%, man. Well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Is there anything else, any other insights or anything that you would want to share with the audience?
I mean, I could talk all day about this stuff.
I'm
So
sure you
careful
could.
what you
I'm
ask
sure you,
for.
I
Yeah,
can tell. I can tell.
yeah. Um, Again, I think when we go back to fundamentals, a lot of people, and what I've always lived by in terms of my playbook, is really understanding the stage you're at. Everyone wants to grow, everyone wants to build a rocket ship, everyone wants to achieve their targets. Every investor, board member wants you to hit 3, 4, 5x of your number because that's what the best businesses in the world are doing today. So some of them are doing even more than that. Um, but the reality is some things have got to come first. You can't just throw money or bodies or resource at a problem and expect growth to happen. You've got to get your foundations and fundamentals right. And so if you're building a scalable go-to-market engine, the reality is before you become scalable, you need to be predictable. You need to know that a dollar in at the top, be that a human, a project, a campaign, a resource, etc., what that is likely to yield at the bottom. If I send 1,000 emails, I will want to know what my response rate, my meeting rates, my conversion rates through the funnel are, my ACV, so I can predict my revenue. If I hire 5 reps, I'm going to want to know how quickly and how across the board they're going to be productive and successful there. In order to get to that position of predictability, I need to be repeatable. I need to build a process that enables us to all do the same thing in the same order, not in the same way. I think that's really important that people are authentic, are diverse, and brings themselves to it, but the process itself has got to be uniform so that I know and I can iterate on that process and understand what I'm measuring. And again, I think people often like to jump steps here and think, and I've worked at organizations where I've walked in and I don't know, we're doing 3 million ARR and the goal is to get to 20 million by the end of the year. So I asked the CEO, what's the thinking around that? Well, today we're 3 AEs, we're going to hire 17 more. Each AE is going to do 300, 400, 500K, and that's how we're going to get there. I'm like, yeah, but how many of those current team are attaining? Well, none, but we'll change that. I'm like, well, we're not ready. We're not ready to scale. We need to get repeatable and predictable. You do it with one, you do it with three, you do it with five, you do it with 10, and you scale incrementally. And so again, I think that's something that a lot of people have lost sight of that because of all the excitement, because of all the development, because of all the success stories of these lovables getting to kind of billions of dollars in revenue and valuations overnight and think, hey, I can do that with the right product and hiring the right people. Well, yes, but you also need to go along the journey as well, figure out what's repeatable, what's predictable in order to scale as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Systems. That's good. Yeah. Agreed. I agree 100%. It reminds me of it, like, yeah, it's kind of related, but I feel like it's worth mentioning. But like, in 2018, when Elon Musk was kind of in the thick of the Model 3 production, and he said they were like minutes away from bankruptcy. Like that's how of a close call it was. But he tried to, it says he tried to automate everything too soon, but that was actually something he thought was a good idea. Like he was proud of it. Like it was his idea. He's like, we're going to automate it with like, they created all these like robotics and like, on the manufacturing line and all this stuff. And then while they're producing, they had these lights, these red lights that would go off if something broke or something was slowing down. And he called it walking to the red. So he like lived inside the warehouse. He would walk to the red and he'd look to see what's going on. And then he tweeted and said, extreme automation was a mistake, and my mistake to be exact. Humans are underrated. Anyway, but the point of the principle, there's a lot of learning lessons there. But the point is that you have to like validate the proper system before you just try to scale it or automate it. Whether that could be, a couple examples could be hiring a massive sales team that's just gonna like start to send all these the copy. Well, do you know if you send that exact copy to 1,000 people, do you know your response rate? Do you know how many of those will convert to an MQL, SQL, whatever? Or it could be like advertising, right? Before you just burn through 10K, $50,000, $100,000 in advertising. Do you know if the copy works? Like, have you tested it? Have you know what I mean? And so building a proper system and validating it. Hey, we have a proof of concept. Now we can start to, appropriately scale this up, whether it be, creating different angles in advertising, whether it be hiring, sales reps, whatever it is. So again, I think it's a fundamental. One of my first mentors told me that. He was like, validate before you automate. And so I would agree with you. I think it's good advice.
I also think it's a relevant lesson as well, that I think we're in an era where, kind of like we talked about with the buyer experience, they've got information at their fingertips. Likewise, anyone who's in a scale up or startup environment, the one true factor around continued success is continued growth and development, right? I use this metaphor a lot. The business is moving at 200 miles an hour. If you two are not moving at 200 miles an hour plus, then the train is soon out of sight. And we have the world at our fingertips today. Courses, coaches, expertise, etc. There is no excuse for people not learning, growing, developing. At the same time, there's a lot of self-proclaimed experts out there. There's a lot of self-proclaimed expertise out there which isn't quite expertise and is misleading or is, clearly GPT generated. And I think you've got to be very deliberate. Again, what am I trying to work on? What am I trying to learn? Yes, carve out time for that learning, growth, and development, but make sure that it's guided. Make sure that you are validating exactly what it is you're reading. Just because you see something on LinkedIn, or just because you come across some great content, doesn't actually mean it's relevant. Doesn't mean it's accurate. So really have a lot of faith in yourself to think for yourself, because a lot of what we do is not this kind of complex black magic voodoo. A lot of what we do is rational and logical, and if it doesn't make sense to you, chances are it's because it doesn't make sense. So I think get your foundations right, continuously learn and develop, and be patient. Make sure the building blocks are there.
Yeah. And how are you doing that? How are you developing yourself?
So I'm an insomniac. So that's where I do a lot of my learning and development. I have certain
Wow.
podcasts I listen to, certain thought leaders that I always look to. I have a coach myself who I
Mm.
meet every 10 days or so. Um, and I actually get the wisdom of the crowd. I think it's my team's responsibility to level me up as well. Whilst I might be their boss and their manager, I ask for feedback in every single one-to-one. And if my team do not come ready with feedback, they're depriving me of a learning and growth opportunity. And I've made that really, really clear. Part of that is setting the precedent that we have a feedback culture that, if you are not giving me feedback, then you're depriving me. So I actually find that probably one of the best sources of information, learning and development myself, which is, well, how are my team reacting to me? What do they really feel? Are they really comfortable being open with me? Because a lot of this is just about my behavior and my change as well. But genuinely, as I said, I love to geek out on this stuff. So I'm always looking and trying to learn the latest kind of techniques, processes, innovations, etc. Albeit I probably adopt very few of them.
Mm. Yeah. I think it's a good point. That you have sounds like you have a well constructed like filter, like you take in a lot, you're open. I think it's open-minded, but not easily persuaded. I think it's
Correct.
maybe, the right way to think about it. So I think it's good.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it, man. Well, thanks for hopping on and sharing wisdom, sharing your insights, your advice. I know it'll be extremely valuable. A lot of our listeners are in the, that kind of startup, go to market phase. So I think a lot of this will be hyper relevant to them. So yeah, well, thanks for hopping on.
Awesome. Thank you for
Yeah,
having me. Really appreciate it, Mitchell. Take care.
of course. Of course.